Thank you for tuning into Literary Blend, a publishing podcast. I'm your host, Demi Michelle Schwartz. There's no perfect recipe for chasing a dream in the publishing industry, but I hope the conversations on this show give you the ingredients you need to bake yours into reality. So let's flip the page and get into this chapter of Literary Blend. Hi friends, welcome back to Literary Blend. Today's chapter is called The Joys and Obstacles of Being a Pantser. And joining me on the show to talk all about pantsing is Desirae Gracyn. Hi Desirae.
Hi, I'm so excited to be on the show.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. And I'm definitely pantsing this conversation and just gonna go wing with it.
Amazing. Well, before we dive into our chat about being a pantser, I would love for you to share a little about yourself and your journey in publishing so far.
All right, so my name is Desirae Gracyn, as you've said, and I write under two pen names, Caroline Cruz and Beatrice Cruz. Caroline is for my fantasy novels that I've been publishing, and Beatrice is for my middle grade works. And then my real name is for all my anthologies that I create. So far, I have 16 anthologies and flash fiction pieces that are getting published by various publishers. That's pretty cool. And then I have my debut novel that is called A Bond of Blood and Lavender, published under Caroline Cruz. It's a dark romantasy. It's for new adult / the upper YA. And I self-published this book in June 16th, 2024.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. I think everybody listening should go read Desiree's book because I got to edit it and it's great.
Thank you. I loved your edits. It made it such a fun read and such more entertaining to write with everything you suggested.
Yeah, amazing. Well, congrats on everything you've been doing, all the anthologies as well. And let's dive into our chat about pantsing. So, I am a total plotter, you're a pantser, so this will be a fun conversation. But what I will say, though, is when I wrote my first two books, I wasn't a total pantser where I had no idea what I was doing with the story. I had some plot points, but I pretty much pantsed all the chapters between the big plot points and found out that did not work for me, and so I decided to be a plotter. But for you, why do you feel like pantsing is the writing style that fits you as an author?
I think it has a lot to do with the reason I write is to escape. I read, I write, I watch movies, all for the escapism. And so when I plot, I've tried the plotting route, but when I plot, I feel like it becomes a job. It becomes a chore. I have to make sure I get each thing outlined into its specificness, and I don't have that freedom anymore. And with me, I'm just so very out there. Like, I don't know how to describe it. I'm very go with like the story. And I like to be surprised, and I just like to have the shock value. And so when I pants it, I'm just letting loose. I'm letting my mind free. I'm not hold down on any specific thing, and I can just escape. And my story in a sense writes itself. So it's kind of like I'm reading a story and I'm getting to escape into a different reality because I have no idea what's about to happen. And so that's kind of why I think I choose that route.
I love that, and I've never heard of anyone really describe plotting as feeling like a chore before, but I can definitely see that aspect because yes, you're creating in a sense where you're thinking about the story. Like when I'm plotting, I'm fully creating, but whenever I am actually writing, I feel like I have a guide. And as somebody who really wants that safety net in a way where I know where the story is going, I think plotting helps me to feel more confident when I start to draft. And so for me, who's someone who loves plotting, I don't see plotting as a chore, but for somebody who, like you, loves the full escapism aspect of pantsing, I can totally see how someone who's a pantser is sitting there plotting going like, why do I have to do this? Why can't I just like start writing? I don't want to do this. I don't want to. So I can totally feel like that aspect of it.
Yeah, and like when I've tried plotting before, and sometimes I will say, because pantsing does have its cons. I mean, and one of the biggest cons is that you, or at least for me, when I pant, I'm going to take maybe 7-10 days to write that novel, but I'm going to take months to edit it. and because of the fact that I pantsed it. So there could be plot holes, or they could be little things that I have to fix or maneuver. Whereas I do see that aspect in plotting that is such a benefit, is that you most likely will not run into any plot holes. And that is the one aspect that makes me wish I could plot, is because I would love not to have those plot holes, and I would love to have everything situated and fixed and know that I'm in a secure spot.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And as someone who plots, I've 100% had plot holes that I kind of discovered when the draft was done, but I think it's less of there were plot holes when I plotted it and more of as I was writing and adding different elements to the story, I kind of created plot holes for myself without realizing it because all of the things in the book obviously aren't in the outline. And so for me, I feel like it's the opposite. Like you say, you write so quickly and then have months and months and months you have to edit. For me, I'm like plotting forever. I draft the book pretty quickly, but then when it comes to editing, I edit super quickly. Like editing's my thing. And so I'm able to do that really quickly. And because my drafts are cleaner, because of plotting, it doesn't take a whole lot of time. And so there are definitely like the pros and cons to pantsing as we're starting to explore. But aside from the whole escape aspect that you really like, what are some other joys of pantsing aside from that surprise and the escapist quality?
I guess it still goes into sort of the surprise element of it. But I mean, it's like if I'm not feeling something, like a scene just isn't hitting me right, I can switch it up because I don't have to worry about, oh, well, I switched this scene up. Now I'm going to have to change my whole entire everything else that goes afterwards. But since I don't have everything else that goes afterwards and I write in the moment with the pantsing, then if something changes and I end up not liking a scene, I just have to delete a little bit and refix that scene, and then everything else is going to change as I go along since I haven't created anything new. So I like that aspect because sometimes I go into a story and I'm like, this girl's so going to love this person. And then a couple chapters in, I'm like, wait, but we're not loving this person. We're loving this person. And then I just flow with that. And so that's like, I like being able to do that and being able to switch my mind and change my mind because I am very fickle on a lot of things. So I'm very fickle in my writing too. And you'll see that where when I'm writing that I'm just like, oh, nope, I don't like this. Let's go with this route. And so I like that.
Yeah, no, that's super great, and that's definitely a freedom aspect that doesn't really come with plotting because even though I do plot, I do deviate from my outline every once in a while, not drastically, but enough where it kind of can create a domino effect at places where I change one little thing or add a scene or do something and then it's like, oh wait, now this changed this thing that happens in chapter 11. And so I'm finding, like, especially when I'm drafting and when I hit those points where I do tweak some things, I always go back to my outline and readjust things so I stay on track. But I love how that freedom aspect, while pantsing, it doesn't restrict you in any way because, like you said, you don't have a plot outline that you're following. So if you decide to make a change on the spot, you can just keep going forward with it. Versus someone like me who, in my brain, I'm like thinking of all the ways I'm making a mess for myself, and then I have to like stop and fix things.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things about pantsing for sure.
So I will say though, like with my short stories, I kind of plot those too, which is ridiculous that I plot short stories because they're so short, but not to the extent, obviously, like with a novel. So, like, I pretty much have like a pitch for myself, like a blurb. Like, this is what my story is about. This is the beginning. This is the middle. This is the character's GMC, and this is how I want it to end. So, I have like those elements of the story, but when I sit down to actually write a short story, I don't know how the scenes are going to play out. And like even when I'm writing novels, like even though I have like a chapter by chapter outline, I don't have like every tiny thing planned out. And so I feel like in a way I do experience being a pantser on the scene level, because when I'm writing my scenes, my characters are surprising me. And even though I have an end point of the chapter or the scene that I'm working toward, I don't know everything that's going to happen in the scene. And I like that freedom at the scene level because, especially when I'm drafting my novels, there's times where I will just get a random idea on the spot that fits, and that's something I can weave into the story that's extra I didn't think of when I plotted. And so I do love experiencing the pantsing aspects at the scene level, but on the whole novel level, I don't think I can handle it. So shout out to everyone who are pantsers because couldn't be me.
And I do think like all of us have a I think we're all in a way planters, and we're both pantsers and plotters, but it's just to what degree are you swinging further to? And I think to my degree I'm further swinging to the pantser side, but like just like you, with the motivation conflict, after having you edit so many of my stories and learning about that, I don't start it. I start my story and I keep flowing with it. But as my story breathes, and before I get to that quarter point or right at that quarter point, I then write my GMCs. And I'm like, okay, so what is there going to be their goal, motivation, conflicts? I've learned my character. Let me get my goal, motivation, conflicts just to make sure I always have that. And that is probably the only thing I plot now.
Yeah, and I think that's like the most important thing if you think about it because the character is at the heart of the story. So even if someone is pantsing their plot and they have absolutely zero clue, they might know it's fantasy and there's dragons or any other aspects you want to include, but story wise, they have no clue what's happening. If you allow yourself to just think a little bit on who's my character, what do they want, what's pushing them to get it, what's standing in their way, what's at stake if they lose, what's their greatest fear, what's their biggest dream. Like, if you ask yourself these very core character questions and you know your character, then I think the story will unfold in a natural way for that character because you know them. If you don't know anything about the character, it might create more challenges down the road because then you're trying to fix the story while also trying to make the character fit for that story when oftentimes the scenes happen and they play out because of the character and their goal and motivation and conflict. So having just a little bit in your mind about who this character is and a little about them will definitely help. So now let's chat more about the obstacles. So we touched on a few, the main one being the revision period can be a little more involved because your drafts aren't as clean. But other than that, what are some obstacles you've run into as a pantser?
I can never get the right word count down. I'm always way too over because I pants.
Yeah.
Because then I'm like, oh, the story just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, and I talk so much that then it just keeps flowing, and I never end it. And I'm like, this got to end. This has to end. And then the word count just gets so high.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that because, like I said, the first two books I did, I was kind of pantser. Like I was a kind of a flutter, kind of a pantser, and both of those were like over 100,000. The one was so long that I do this thing. I don't know if anybody else does this, but I draft in my chapters in separate documents and then copy and paste to get like it in one doc because the way my brain works when I'm working on different versions of the story, I make copies of my documents and keep everything. But when I was doing my one thriller, the second book I did, when I was copying and pasting it into one chapter or one document, I was just watching the workout go up. I'm like, I'm literally at like 110,000 and I'm not done yet. What is happening? So I definitely was like that person too. And as someone who literally hates cutting, like I was in tears by the end of like doing this. That book now, for context, is like 73,000. Like I really got that down. But it is a nightmare. I'd rather have to add words than cut words.
I think I'm in the same boat. Even when I write my short stories, I get on the lengthy side of, especially for Micromance. If anyone knows that magazine, great magazine. But the word count's 1,200
Yeah, yeah.
words, and I will end up writing about 27, and then have to reread that story at least 8 times to get it down to 1,200. And I'm like, ah,
Yeah, I
and I'm
know.
dying.
Yeah, no, when you told me about them and I was doing the submission for the holiday one, I was like, 1,200, like, this is, like, so hard. But it's a good practice, though, of writing succinctly.
Yes, I'm getting better at writing shorter now, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, but I would say too, like countering with the cons of the plotting side, like, I've noticed the last few books that I wrote where I fully had a chapter outline, especially my last thriller I wrote last year, it's 65,000, which for a YA thriller is pretty low. Like, I want that at least above 70,000, closer to like 75,000 or 80, because it's super involved. And so that's one of the downsides I think is to plotting, because my outlines are so tight that I stick to that. And when the book's done, it's like, yeah, my pacing might be great and like the story is good, but the word count's too low. And so on the side of pantsing, where you have to sort of go through, like, if you're way, way over word count, you're in the situation of asking yourself, is there a story thread? Like, is there a plot line that could be cut? Is there a whole character that could be cut? That kind of thing. I'm doing the opposite, looking at this and going, okay, how can I add like a character or a subplot or something that gets the word count up without wrecking the pacing and messing up the story? And so that's one of the things that's hard with plotting, but cutting the words down is not that fun.
No. Especially when you're at 120 and you have so many points of views and you're like, "But I can't cut anything. I can't do it." It's so hard.
I know. We definitely have conversations where you're like, "How can I get it down?" And then I tell you what to add, and you're like, "But it just went up again."
Yes, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Ah, but that's probably one of the biggest cons, and then the really long, revision period just gets me so many times because that and also whenever I pants, because I'm flowing with the story so much, I don't really care about my punctuation, my grammar, my spelling. So I'm probably spelling so many words incorrectly, but I'm just flowing because my head is going as it taught. Like my head is thinking and I'm trying to write as I think. So that does include like a whole entire day to 2 days of just fixing your spelling errors because of how fast I'm writing.
Yeah. Well, the big thing I wanted to kind of close the chat on is tips for revising when you're a pantser. And I'm talking like developmentally. So if you pants a story, you're way over word count, there's scenes that don't make sense, your characters' goals and motivations are super clear, and you really need to basically rewrite and rework the story. What advice do you have for anyone who's in the same boat of writing a book, pantsing it, and looking at their first draft and going, how in the world am I going to fix this?
I've actually started this with my main I had a book edited by you that I realized that had some issues that I had to definitely fix. So then this is where I developed this process and I took it to my next two novels and it just really, really helps the process of revising, which is what I did is after writing the whole story, then I sat there and I went and I wrote I made an outline of this is where it would look like a plot, but it happened after the fact. And I wrote out chapter one. This is what was in chapter one. Okay, am I missing something in chapter one? Then I do it for chapter two. I do it for all the chapters. Then I reread that chapter and I see, okay, what can I be missing or what does it not have? And as I read that whole entire chapter outline, then I can see what needs to go, what needs to be added, and that definitely helps instead of me having to reread the story many times and actually helps me align things, put things in the correct order. So I definitely suggest to then plot it after you have created the story, to do a whole entire outline of those chapters and you do a whole entire Excel sheet of your characters, their goals, their motivations, their conflicts, their hair colors, their quirks, their little things that they do specifically to them, and just creating that sheet and creating everything like you would if you were plotting it, but doing it all on the after fact. And that would be your second read through. So then when you go through on your third read through, you're fixing those things and you're making sure everything is fixed in the right order and everything. And it just makes the revision process so much faster and reduces so many times that you have to reread it.
Yeah, that's great. The whole reverse outlining thing has been recommended by a ton of people. And so that's really great. This is something I would honestly recommend for plotters too. Like, if I know I'm going to be making developmental changes after my first draft is done, I do this exact same thing where I'll literally like make a copy of my outline I had originally, go through, read the book, and basically do exactly what you said, make myself an outline, like a chapter outline of what I actually wrote and how I want to fix it, because you will have that guide when you're revising, especially if you're changing so many things. It can be overwhelming to have all these different things bouncing around in your head that you have to fix. But if you break it down and actually have it on paper of what you need to change and where, then you can take it bite size, going chapter to chapter, or if there's like a bigger thing that's going to be affecting several parts in the book, you can go hit that and then work smaller down on the chapter level and then the scene level. So having that written down is definitely something that will help make revisions smoother.
Yes, and I even highlight the main ones that I'm having the problems with, so I know to, like, really focus on that when I'm reading it the next time, and it just really helps because you have that clear plate of information to help you as and guide you through as you do your revisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been such a great chat. To wrap up, what are some final thoughts you would love to share in general about being a pantser?
It can be really fun, and I definitely, I know this is a little controversial with some people, but I definitely think my characters create for me, and I think that is really fun. Like my characters write the story, and I just really love that. And if you ever have problems with your plot or you ever are struggling with a piece, just see where your characters want to go and write a side story, which is kind of fun when you're pantsing. Write a side story of that one character and see where they go. And then you can hop that back into your story and flow more because you've learned more about your character.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me for this super insightful and fun chat. This brings us to your plot twist where I get to ask you a random fun question you could have never seen coming. Are you ready?
Ooh la la. I'm ready.
So I know you love Disney.
Yes.
Your reaction. So, if you could completely rewrite the story of one of the Disney princesses, which princess would you choose, and what is one of the main things you would change in their story, and why?
I could rewrite. Oh my gosh. That is so hard. Like I could sit here for days thinking of that. Um This is such a tough question. I'm staring at my bedroom that is decorated in Beauty and the Beast, and I want to say Beauty and the Beast, but that is not my answer. It is not my answer. Um, I think Little Mermaid.
Love that one.
Yeah, I think I would change Little Mermaid, and how I would change it is I would create more time with her being on the ocean side and more time with her being with Eric. Um, and so, I mean, I would just make it lengthier and I would give her more. I don't know. I love them all, so there's nothing wrong with them. Like, I don't have anything I would change. I take it back. Not Little Mermaid. I don't know. Ah. Okay, final answer. My final answer is Snow White. That is the one I would change.
Okay, why? What would you
Snow
change?
White. That was the only Disney movie that I had a hard time getting through. And I had a hard time watching Snow White. I think I just couldn't get behind, like there wasn't enough in depth, there wasn't enough storyline for me, and I wanted it to grow more. I wanted to know more about Snow, and I wanted to know more of her story, and not just about the dwarfs. Like I knew all about the dwarfs, I knew all about the animals, I knew about what happened to her and Prince Charming, but I wanted to know more about Snow.
Amazing. Well, that's in the public domain, isn't it? Snow White is, I
I think
believe.
so.
I
I
believe
think,
so. So you
yeah.
should definitely write your improved version of Snow White.
Yes, that would be fun.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Can you please share with everybody where they can connect with you online and check out your book?
So I have a website, startreebooks.com, and that is the imprint under my stories that will be published. And so you can connect with me there, and you can also connect with me with Desirae J. Gracyn on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. And listeners, that is a wrap on this chapter of the show with Desirae, all about the joys and obstacles of being a pantser. If you enjoyed our conversation, please consider leaving Literary Blend a review and giving it 5 stars to help others just like you discover it. Also, if you have friends in publishing you think would enjoy the show too, please pass it along to them. Thanks for listening, and until we flip to the next chapter, happy reading and writing.